Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to Partnership Aligned Podcast. So, today we're going to talk about a topic that is long overdue because it's such an important topic when it comes to relationships. And I have yet to do a full episode on it. Today, we're going to talk about boundaries, how to set a healthy boundary. And to talk about that, I brought in someone who is an expert on that. So, I have with me Nancy Picard. Hi, Nancy. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for coming on. So Nancy is a best-selling author. She wrote a book called Bigger, Better, Braver: Conquer Your Fears, Embrace Your Courage, and Transform Your Life. She is a boundary coach, a shadow coach, and a relationship coach. So you've got a lot of notches on your belt. That's amazing. How long have you been a coach for?
I've been a life coach for the last 10 years, and then I owned a personal training gym for 16 years before that.
Okay, yeah, all different kinds of coaching.
Yeah, all different kinds.
Perfect. So, I have never heard of shadow coaching. What is that?
So shadows are the beliefs that are hidden in our subconscious from the first 10 years of life. So we all have them, no matter how good or bad your childhood was. Events happen and we give it a meaning and we're not even aware of it. It gets buried in our subconscious, but it rules our operating system. So beliefs like, I need to be perfect to be loved. I'm unworthy. I
Mm,
need to stay small to be safe. My voice doesn't matter. My needs don't matter. I need to, love and life means taking care of everybody before me. All of these beliefs are not only in our operating system, but they attract people and situations into our lives, our whole life, to prove that our limitations are true. And until we uncover them and give ourselves a new empowering belief that fits who we are today, our wise adult mind, we live out of those disempowering beliefs. So mine was, I'm not safe to be alone, because when I was 5 years old, I put myself on fire. And so that makes sense. So the beliefs were all adaptations from the life we were living, and they were brilliant. Our adaptive children were brilliant because they keep us safe, but eventually they they keep us small and stuck. So what was adaptive then becomes maladaptive in our adult lives.
yeah, you know what I love about coaching and mental health and all this stuff is that we're all kind of saying the same thing in different ways. Because
Yeah.
I talk about this all the time, but when I was a therapist, I would talk about it as like, your coping, your defense mechanisms. They kept you safe at one point. They may have even kept you alive. Now they become the problem, right? And even now that I'm no longer facilitating therapy, but I'm doing coaching, I talk a lot about these beliefs that keep us stuck. And maybe I might call them stories, or I might call them the things you make that mean. And so I just love that everyone is saying the same thing in different verbiage. Number one, because it really solidifies that, like, this is truth, right? This is truth. This is the human experience.
Right. We
And I
all
love
have.
that we're all saying it in different ways because
Yeah.
I know that, I might hear two different coaches talk about the same thing. And one of them just doesn't use vocabulary that works for me or that resonates with me. And another one does. So
Yes.
I just think
I
it's a
agree.
beautiful thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. So today we want to talk about boundaries, and this podcast audience is full of women who just want to feel more connected to their partner, just are feeling resentful, unappreciated, having a hard time communicate. In that realm, in that world, where do you see boundary issues come up the most?
I think what happens is that women don't learn how to say what they want and what they need. They're very used to putting other people in front of them and not asking for what they want, and kind of having this magical thinking that if you loved me, you'd know what
You
I need,
know, yeah.
which is such bull. It's
Yeah.
not true. People are not mind readers, especially men are not mind readers. So if you put together those shadow beliefs of my voice doesn't matter, or my needs don't matter, I need to be perfect to be loved, or I need to take care of others to be loved, you will have more trouble setting a healthy boundary. So, historically, women are people pleasers,
Hmm.
conflict avoiders. We twist ourselves up in a pretzel to be digestible to those around us. All of those things keep us from setting healthy boundaries.
Yeah.
And so, what happens is that we think selfish is a bad word and selfless is a good word. And the reality is they're on the same spectrum. Neither one is good. When you're selfless, there's less you, right? There's no you. You are invisible. So you need to learn when to be selfish and when to be selfless. And learning to put yourself and make yourself a priority is so hard for women to do. But if you don't do it, it's like you refuse to put your oxygen mask on first.
Ugh.
And you get depleted. And not only do you get depleted, but picture pushing a big beach ball down into the water in a pool. And you push it and you push it and you push it. And before you know it, it slips out and goes flying out of the pool. That's what women do. We hold it in, we do everything, we multitask, we're super women. And all of a sudden, for something that might not even be a big deal, we explode. And our partners are looking at us like we've got three heads. They don't know where that came from. And where it came from is that we didn't ask for what we need. We didn't make ourselves a priority. And we overdid and we overgave until we explode. So if you want a happier relationship and you want to have any strength left at the end of the day, you have to learn how to set boundaries and how to ask for what you need in a way that is cherishing and will be accepted by your partner.
Yeah, I love that you brought up the beach ball. I use that all the time, right?
Oh,
And
really?
yeah, except I add to it, I say, and then it hits you in the face and
Yeah.
and it splashes everybody around you, you know?
Yeah,
So
that's good. I like that.
yeah, I can't remember where I heard the beach ball thing. Maybe you
I got it from
remember.
Debbie Ford. Have you ever listened to any of Debbie Ford's work?
No, no. I mean, clearly it's floating around out there, but yeah, it's a really good one. And it is true. And that was true for me in my marriage. I would not speak up. And when I look back and really, because I've done a lot of coaching on this, like personal coaching on me, when I look back, what I realize is that I wasn't even clear with myself on my needs.
Right.
It wasn't like I knew and I just wasn't telling him. Like I was lying to myself about what I needed. One of my, shadow thoughts, I don't know if I'm using that term right, but like one of mine was,
Definitely.
yeah, one of mine was, like I need to be the cool girl. Like I need to be, by cool, I mean like calm and like go with the flow. And, that's who I want to be.
Mhm.
And in most areas of my life, that's who I am, and it's fine and it's natural and it serves me. But when I wasn't feeling that way in my marriage, I felt like I still had to be that person anyway. And so I actually lied to myself and told myself that I didn't need those things. So of course, like, how could I tell him? Right.
Right, right.
Yeah.
That's part of it. These women, they know they're not happy and they want their husbands to show up in a different way, but they don't really know what they need.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't know what you need, how can you expect
Yeah.
men to know what they need? And
Yeah.
so that's one whole part of this. The other part is that these men, I mean, if you've got young mothers with young children, the story I tell myself is that their husbands are way more set for being less patriarchal politically than, say, my generation, where the
Sure.
men really were brought up that, they go to work and the wife can stay home or not, and they're in charge and they're the one up, and, the wife is the one down, and that's how the relationship is. And I mean, I have two daughter-in-laws and two sons, and my sons do a lot more with the kids and around than in my generation. Yet you can still see the disparity, and especially if you've got stay-at-home moms. I mean, if you've got stay-at-home moms, that's sort of what they're buying. They're buying in, I'm going to stay home and I'm not going to have to leave my children, and I'm not going to go out and be in the world and have all of those stresses, but I do still have a lot of stress and I'm still exhausted at the end of the day. And I still want you to be helpful, but it's a little bit harder to balance. But I see it in all, I have some clients who are CEOs of 3 companies with 4 children.
Yeah.
And they still come home and they're like doing everything. And basically at that point, it's more like, ladies, if you're depleted and your husband's depleted and you can afford somebody, get somebody to do the jobs you don't want to do. It's like, instead of trying to squeeze blood out of a stone with your husband for some of these things, pay for it, hire somebody. And I'm not saying like, oh, everyone's got money and everyone can do that. I'm saying that figure out if you can do that.
Mm-hmm.
Figure out if you can get somebody to come help you in. Like, I had a client once who said that, she's totally vegan. She's got 4 teenage kids. And I said to her, and she makes these elaborate vegan meals every day. And I said to her, you've got to get yourself a chef that's going to come in at least a couple of days a week, and even sous chef, and half prepare things. And she said to me, well, isn't that a little extravagant? And I said, I think 4 kids is extravagant, but that horse has left the barn.
Yeah.
How can you can't do everything.
Yeah.
So, it's sometimes it's like, if everybody's depleted, maybe you got to bring somebody else in. And you also have to get clear on asking for what you want. So I will give you a little tips on setting healthy boundaries. And so I teach my clients to use a script. I feel is the first part of it. So I feel disrespected. I feel exhausted. I feel sad. I feel lonely. I feel angry. When you leave the dishes in the sink, don't play with the kids. I have to ask for you to do what I need you to do. I have to remind you 10 times. I ask you to bring something up and you don't. Whatever. I mean, come on, we're all ladies here. We can name 100 things they're not doing that we feel a certain way. So I feel disrespected when you leave the dishes in the sink for later. Would you be willing to just stick them in the dishwasher?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about the way you word it. And I do something very similar with my clients where I tell them to say, when you leave the dishes in the sink, I make that mean that you don't respect me. So could you please? Exactly. Yeah. It really is all about the wording. I do have some clients, though, that just have a really hard time saying it in a respectful way. They might follow a script, but the tone and the facial expressions and the energy is not there. Yeah.
So there's nothing that you can say with harshness that isn't better served saying with soft, loving power. So harshness gets you nowhere.
So true.
Get yourself in control. Take a deep breath. Bring the wise adult part of your brain, so you're not in your adaptive child part of your brain, which is where those clients are actually living in the moment. And start with a feeling about you, because honestly, that's how you're feeling. They're not responsible for how you're feeling. So it's sort of like saying the story I tell myself is, it's a story, but it's how you're feeling. So instead of making them the bad guy, it's sort of like, I feel this way. Someone else might not give a crap that you left the dishes in the sink, but I feel disrespected.
Right.
I feel exhausted. I feel pissed.
Yeah.
When you don't communicate with me, when you have more than 2, I've had clients who have husbands who have a drinking problem and who don't really admit they have a drinking problem, but they're like an angry drunk. But the wife doesn't want to stop drinking either. That's also a whole big thing. Like, you can't expect them to stop drinking while you sit and have 2 glasses of wine when you go out to dinner. So I've had them say, I get really angry when you have more than 2 drinks at night. Would you be willing to stop at 2 drinks? And if you can't, I'm going to sleep in the guest room alone that night.
Right.
Or if you have more than 2 drinks and we're out with company or I'm alone, I'm not going to say a word. I'm just going to get up and leave and go home. And so you actually have to have a plan B, a follow through, because
Yeah.
just because you set a boundary doesn't mean they're going to follow through. But if you set a boundary, you must follow through.
Yeah, and I think it's so interesting or so important that what you brought up was that your follow through has to be something that's within your control.
100%.
Because so often people want to set a boundary and say, well, if you don't, stop drinking at dinner or whatever it is, then you'll need to sleep in the guest room or you'll need to leave. But you can't do that because you can't make them do anything.
Right.
It has to be something that you
Right.
have the power to get up and do
Right.
yourself.
Well, you could say, which is what I would say, is I'll be sleeping alone in the bedroom that night. But most of my clients are afraid to say that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have now acquiesced. Fine, you sleep in the guest room. I don't care who sleeps in the guest room, but somebody's sleeping in the guest room. And I've had clients who have done that. And the guy's, banging on the door.
On the door. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so
Yep.
I get it,
Yeah.
but you still have to have a follow through, or their actions will not change. So
yeah. And I always say I'd rather you not set a boundary than set a boundary and then not follow through.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nobody can cross your boundary except for you. If you set it, you own it. So don't set something you're not going to follow through. I recently, I don't know if fired is the right word, but I was working with a couple and the guy was totally withdrawn and very grandiose and didn't want to do the work. And even though his wife had left for 2 weeks and didn't want to come back until some changes were made, he actually knew she has no follow through. And so when I saw this, that she says certain things and says certain things, but has no follow through, I fired them. I said, you're not ready for marriage counseling because you don't want to do the work and you have no follow through. I have no leverage. I can't, there's nothing for me to work with. And I can't work harder than you are. So I just don't think you guys are ready. Yeah. And so that's the other thing. Ladies, you can't just be unbridled self-expression, like blah, 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 with no follow through.
Yeah. And that's where a coach really comes in, right? Because when you've been with the same person for years and years, and now you have kids and you're tired, and it's like, you can't see the label from the inside of the bottle. Like you really need somebody to help you put those things in place and help you see whether your, follow through consequence that you want to put down, like, is it realistic? Is it something that's within your control? Does it match the actual boundary that's been crossed? Like these things are so important. Up until now, we've been talking about setting boundaries around things that are a little bit more tangible, like not drinking, dishes, stuff like that. I wanted to shift a little bit into setting emotional boundaries. When a partner is being manipulative or when a partner is like things that aren't as tangible and clear, when there's, somebody's raising their voice, which is kind of a subjective thing. One person says it is raising my voice. The other one says, no, I'm not, things like that. Do you coach on those things any differently?
I do. I do a lot of work around and this is all based from Terry Real's work in relational life therapy on the 5 losing strategies that all couples do some sort of: the need to be right, the need to control, unbridled self-expression, retaliation, and withdrawal. Those are 5 losing strategies, and couples end up with patterns. She has unbridled self-expression and then he withdraws. And then the more he withdraws, the more she needs to be right. And the more she needs to be right, then he might join her there, or he withdraws more and then she withdraws and then nobody's speaking, right? Yeah. Stuff like that. So yes, I help a lot with that. What happens a lot in relationships is there's one blatant, and there's not always, there could be 2 blatants, there could be 2 latents, but generally there's one blatant and one latent. So let's say this is the center of health, but you've got one person up here who's more grandiose and who's like making more of the trouble. And then there's one down here who's complaining, maybe she's an angry Layton, but she's not the same power. And I help my clients balance. I help bring the grandiose one down by showing him how he's not being relational. He's not, he's got individual empowerment, but there's no relational empowerment. So I try to bring the one down up and the one up down, so everybody is same as. And that's where the work is. And that is what I do with my couple clients, because a lot of times the grandiose one doesn't see it. You know, it's usually the latent that's bringing in the blatant for therapy. I'm so, you know, I think that on some level they think the therapist is going to like punch, you know,
fight for them.
we're
Yeah.
going to make them do it. Right. And
Yeah.
that's not what happening. But I do help them learn all of these different tools, and even the feedback wheel. Like, so let's say the feedback wheel is 4 different sentences that you can have 1 or 2 sentences about. So it's, instead of just having these long conversations where the guy stops listening, you start with just the facts. It's almost like a camera. This is what I saw. I walked in the house and I was gone 2 hours. You were watching the kids. I walk in the house and it looks like a bomb came, you know. That's what I saw. The next part is the story I made up is,
Yeah.
what you used to.
Right. What I made that mean. Yeah.
What the story I said about that is, and now you get to say all the things. You're so lazy, you're so unhelpful, you're like all the things you wanted to say in the first 2 sentences, you get to say now, because now it's a story. And then you say, that story made me feel really disrespected and lonely and fed up with our relationship and fed up with you. And what I need from you is the 4th part. What I need from you is clean up. Whatever you do, I managed to clean up while I've got the kids in the house. I need you to do the same thing. And then I add this little piece. I mean, Terry adds it too, but it's not technically in the feedback wheel. What can I do for you that will help you give me what I need?
Oh, I like that.
I'll tell you why it's really good, because the person gets to start off. His first response is what he needs.
Yeah.
He's not even dealing with what you need yet.
Yeah. It's very collaborative.
Yes. It's cherishing. And that's it. You made it a story so that you're not right out saying those things are what you really think, but you do. But it's the way you present it, the story I'm telling about that. And that story made me feel. So he's not even making you feel, because obviously nobody can make you feel. And then this is what I need. And how can I help you so you can give that to me?
Right. Yeah, I think that's great. And I think just these restructuring of how to say these sentences is so powerful, because people are in relationships just playing like the blame shame spiral for years. And so to have someone give you some kind of a script or, you know, I call them like conversation prompts, to be able to help you word your needs and your feelings in a way that can actually be heard. That's everything, you know? Yeah. So what would you say to the woman listening who is like, okay, I get it. I have not been, you know, expressing myself in a way that works. And, you know, now I really want to start. Because one of the things, I'll tell you why I'm asking. One of the things that I see is that women will listen to like a lot of podcasts and see things on Instagram and try and go rogue, you know, and then they'll go all the way in the other direction where they're like setting boundaries and consequences for everything, right?
I have a funny story about that.
Yeah.
I did a 10 women. I did 2 separate boundary coaching groups. One with 30 and 40-year-old women and one with 60 and 70-year-old women. And they ran at the same time. So it was really interesting for me to see the differences between the 2. But in the boundary one, 2 of those 30-year-olds were my daughter-in-laws.
Oh, interesting.
And one week, my daughter-in-law says to the group, I am such a boundary badass. Like, I'm setting boundaries everywhere. And this is with my son, right?
Right.
And in the next week, she comes back and she says, well, this was interesting. My son says to her, would you be willing, which is the boundary thing, right? Would you be willing to just set boundaries once a week?
Oh,
Because
that's so funny.
I'm waking up every day to new boundaries.
So he set a boundary on her boundary
He
setting.
set a boundary on his boundary setting.
That's so good.
Yeah. And so I now, when I work with people, I say, you do have to pick and choose.
Yeah.
You can't just be setting boundaries, boom, 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 boom. You've got to pick and choose. And I also teach my clients, boundary setting starts with you. Where are you not holding boundaries with yourself? Oh, I'm going to lose 10 pounds. I'm going to meditate every day. How many promises do you make to yourself that you don't keep? So you have to figure out, what are you willing to tolerate and not tolerate within yourself? What is no longer acceptable for you? Start there.
That is so good. I mean, we teach people how to treat us.
Right.
You
get what you accept.
Yes, exactly. Love that so much, because, relationship coaching really is just like coaching your relationship with yourself. Right. And then it transfers into the actual partnership. But there's no such thing as working on your relationship without working on you. It's not a thing. Yeah. So then I guess, just to go back to the question, like, I'm thinking of, I have a few clients in mind that I know listen to this podcast, that they have been setting boundaries with their husbands, and their husbands are not healthy. Their husbands are not able to grow. They don't have tools. They have a lot of emotion, a lot of shadow stuff, right? Like all of that. And I don't know if it's not that they don't have the capacity to hold the boundary, but they don't even really understand it. I mean, it's just really not even their language. So, I mean, what would you say to a woman who is kind of trying to set a boundary, and they just have a husband that just doesn't see the value in it, or doesn't agree, or,
Can you tell me what the boundary is?
Like, when you're upset, please don't manipulate me, right, into being the one that has to like coddle you and give you pity. And I'm not saying it's being said that way, but that's kind of what happens,
So you can teach her to say, your reaction to like my truth. Like, if I ask you to do something and you don't do it, your reaction is not my responsibility, it's yours. And so, so that's one thing.
And he doesn't like, and he doesn't like that. So then it's just becoming comfortable with the fact that he doesn't like it.
Yeah, right. So number one, that's what you tell her. His reaction to your boundary is not your responsibility. We're not supposed to be healing our partner's wounds. Right. They're supposed to be doing their own work. And so she may suggest to him, listen, you're in resistance about something here, and it's not my job to heal you. You might want to see somebody.
Yeah.
You might want to get yourself a coach and do some inner child work and get this fixed on your own. So that's one thing. And the other thing is, you can't change. He's the grandiose one. He's the one up here, and he's the one that's causing more problems. And he's probably on this side of the grid, meaning he's withdrawn and he's a little superior, and he's almost like, why bother? Like, you're almost not worthy of me doing this. That's that person. You have to have leverage. So whether the leverage is, you're not being very relational with me, I'm not feeling very turned on for you. Like, it's the truth. I need you to show up for me so I can show up for you.
Yeah.
Or, you know what? You're not bringing to the table what I'm asking you. And I don't really feel like going to these corporate dinners by your side like everything is great when it's not. And so you do have to have consequences. Sometimes they need you to do something so that they will make the changes that you want.
Right. It's the follow through.
It's the follow through, and it's the leverage. You've got to it's like a child, take something away that they want, if they're not performing the way you need them to. And you think that what you're asking for is a realistic ask.
Right. And that's the thing. It has to be something reasonable. It has to be something realistic. It has to be something healthy. Because, it's controversial of whether to try and, withdraw something from someone to get them to be different, because that could be misconstrued as controlling. But at the same time, like, you want to set your own boundaries. And, you bring up sex, like, that's a big one. That's a really big one. Is a lot of women are not feeling turned on because their emotional needs are not being met.
Right.
And, we want to feel emotionally connected. That's what turns us on.
Right. So we use that. We don't see that as retaliation. We use that as,
Well, it's truth.
feeling very loving towards you right now. Like,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but I have needs and you have needs, and both of our needs, the question is, how do both of you get your needs met?
Yeah.
So I know you want sex more than I do. It's how you feel loved and desirable and connected to me. I get that. This is how it works for me. I need you to hear me and see me. I need to be seen. See, most women who are like in the victim mode or feel that they're not being heard, they're just not being seen. They don't feel connected that way. And partly it's it's a co-creation. So partly it's the problem of the husband, and partly it's because if you've got like unbridled self-expression and you're nagging all the time with no follow through, blah, 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 like, I would stop listening too.
Right.
So if things are not working, look to see if those losing strategies, which ones you're using, because they're not working. So
Right.
instead of demanding, shift from complaint to request, right? Respond with generosity. Like Tara uses this example. If you went to like, Bloomingdale's customer service, and you brought back a toaster oven and you said, my toaster oven isn't working, the person behind the desk is not going to say to you, my oven's not working. And that's what happens. Like, if your husband says, I'm not feeling very this, you're going to say, well, yeah, and I'm not feeling very this. Like, so don't do that with your partner. Let your partner have his day in court, and you pick a different time. Just listen and try to hear what they're saying, their complaint, and take it in without resistance. Just take it in, because it's
Right.
their reality. And if you want to be relational and more cherishing, give in to whatever you can. Say yes to whatever feels right.
Yep.
They may request 3 things and you may only give them 1, but give them the 1.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's empowering each other. How can I help you? Give me, what can I do to help you give me what I need? I did that with my partner once, and his response was, I need you to talk nicer to me. And so, my first response was, oh, come on, please, but I had to say, okay, yeah, honey,
Yeah.
I can do that. I get it. I can do that.
Yeah.
And I did. And then he said, okay, and then I can give you what you need. And so sometimes if you ask that, you're going to get a surprising answer that will be helpful for both of you.
Well, it's such a powerful question. My God.
Yeah.
It's such a powerful question. And it's outside the box of what we normally say when we're trying to get our needs met.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fabulous. Yeah. I love all of the concrete tips that you're giving of like literally like what to say and what is it? The wheel of losing strategies and
No, the feedback wheel was the 4 questions.
right.
And then the other was just what the losing and winning strategies are.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's true. I mean, I did a master class once on how to deepen the connection with your partner, like 5 ways. And I started it with the opposite. And they were basically those losing strategies. I mean, it really is across the board.
Yeah.
It really is. But when we're in resentment, when we're feeling like we have to protect ourselves and we're hurt, and I hear a lot of like, oh, I did not think that this was what marriage was going to be like. We're feeling disappointed when we're feeling all of those really difficult emotions, and we don't have the support and we don't have the tools to handle those emotions. We do end up we end up expressing in ways that just create more conflict and then more conflict. And then before you know it, you're under a pile of conflict and you're stuck and you don't know what to do.
Right. And also when you talk about, this isn't what I thought, well, that comes to parenting. Oh God, I thought my child was going to be like this, and I thought I was going to be the best mom, and I thought that I was going to wake up every day and it was just going to be, fun and blah, blah, blah. So when I do parenting coaching, which is one of the things I do, the first thing I do is try to get the fairy tale of what they thought being a parent and parenthood was going to be like.
Yeah, the expectations.
Yeah, and get down to the reality of it's hard. And what I want to say to everybody is, if you don't heal your childhood wounds, you are passing them on directly, like breast milk, into your children.
Yes.
And that's the generational trauma being passed down from generation to generation. And you have to do your work. So you are the one to stop that.
Yes.
Right there in the tracks.
Yeah, because I'm always fascinated by how kids will take on parts of their parents that their parents never even verbalize.
Yes.
It doesn't even need to be said out loud.
Yes.
Yeah. They
you
become
either react to or you model.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you do both. If you've had an abusive father, you are shamed and you are in reaction to, but at the same time, he's your same-sex parent. And so you model how men behave.
Yeah.
So you're getting both ends at the same time.
Yeah. Well, this is just like a perfect plug for like anybody who's listening. Go get yourself a mentor. I say this on almost every episode because I think the biggest gift that I've given myself is just ongoing coaching, and if it's deep trauma, go see a therapist. And if it's, there's all different kinds of mentors you can go to, but I've crossed paths with people many times that feel very lonely because they think that they are alone in their journey. And like, you don't have to be.
Right.
Like, you can get help. Like, you don't have to suffer with the things your parents said to you or things that happened, or, you can heal all of that. And you don't have to heal it 100% for your entire life to change.
Right. No.
Yeah.
Every
increment.
moment is
Yep. It's all shift after shift. Yeah.
That's why it's interesting when you do group coaching, because like I'm taking 7 women right now through the new relational blueprint, like how to make yourself the priority and set healthy boundaries and change the paradigm of what you thought it would be. And like you get into a group and every woman's like, oh, well, she just said exactly what I'm thinking. Right. Over and over and over again. All of a sudden, you're not alone. You're all feeling the same stuff in different ways. And it's really
exactly. And the vulnerability, when one woman is vulnerable and really opens up about what she's going through, the effect that it has on the rest of the group.
Yes, I agree.
Such a beautiful thing. That's why I try and get vulnerable on my podcast, because I just think, even though I've had to work through some shame and different things that went on for me, I know how powerful it is for other people to hear those things out loud and be like, oh, me too.
Well, that's the difference. I think one of the difference between therapists and coaches, because my relational life therapy, 75% of us are therapists. And so I'm getting a lot of therapy and family, I'm getting all of that in, even though I'm a coach and I didn't start out with that. But one of the big differences is that coaches coach by example. Yeah. My clients know all the crap in my life, you know, they don't know the new wounds, they know the scarred wounds, you know,
Yeah.
the things I've already healed are the things that I share so that you can see I too have, you know, I was married 26 years and, you know, divorced, and my husband married somebody 23 years younger than us. And so like I've had cancer and I've lost babies. I mean, I've had so much drama in my life that's what makes me such a good coach,
Yep.
because I've lived through a lot of stuff, and I'm kicking, and I'm here to say that, you know, you can overcome everything and it makes you stronger as long
Yes.
as you use it to heal.
100%. And you have choices, you know, your story. Like I also have a lot of things that I've been through, like addiction and divorce and all this other stuff. And it's like, you get to decide whether you're a victim or a survivor.
Exactly.
And essentially you are both, but which
Right.
one do you want to nurture?
Yeah.
You get
Exactly.
to decide. And the
Yeah.
path that you take there will change the trajectory of your life experience
Right.
and the people around you.
Yeah. And it's not how often you fall, it's
Right.
how long you stay down.
Yep. Exactly.
That's on
Exactly.
you. That's a
Yep.
choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So any last words of wisdom to these women who are just dying
Mm.
to feel closer to their partner?
Yeah, you know, become the partner you want to have.
Hell yeah.
If you want to be more intimate, be more intimate. If you want to be more cherishing, be more cherishing. Be generous of heart. Give your husband what you think he needs and ask for what you need, and leave harshness out of the game. Leave the blame out of it. Leave the things that happened 6 years ago out of it. Stay in the present, stay positive, and ask for what you need with grace and ease. But ask.
Beautiful. Beautiful way to end the episode. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, you're amazing. So tell us, where can we find you and where can we find your book?
Okay, so Bigger, Better, Braver is everywhere on Amazon or Barnes and Noble. You can get it on my website. I have the paperback, and I also have the Audible, and I love the Audible because it's me.
Mm-hmm.
So that was me being Bigger, Better, Braver. And then my website is Nancy Picard, lifecoach.com, and everything is on there. A free discovery call with me, a free chapter of my book, a couple other freebies, and then many, not all, of the different coaching modalities that I do are on there. So, and all my podcasts are on there. Like I can put yours on too when I get it. And so it's all there.
Great. Yeah. And I'll make sure to link all of that in the show notes. So if you're listening, you can just scroll down and click away.
Great.
Thank you so much for coming on, Nancy. I think you're amazing. And I think that, you know, we're all saying the same thing, trying to help people just have deeper connections. And I love linking up with people who are just saying it a little bit differently. So thank you so much for coming on.
I love when the podcast host is also a coach or a therapist, because the conversation is just, oh, I'm going to use that. Like now my beach ball is going to slap people in the face too. You've upgraded my beach ball.
Right. I did add that part myself. And then I was like, and it splashes everyone around you. I was like,
yeah,
it's good.
Great.
I'm keeping it.
I love it.
Amazing. All right. Thanks for coming on. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And I will talk to you next week.